like, oh, you're dark. I hear that a lot. Oh my gosh, this person's so dark. And I'm like, they're having an emotional expression.
Yeah.
I think they're human is really what's happening. Whoa.
Hi.
Let's go with that. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I don't really know. I think this time's different, as we mentioned last week. It's like not as emotionally intense. I definitely feel way more grounded throughout the experience, but definitely notice there's a lot of big stuff shifting through and a lot of like making emotional clear out. It feels like an emotional car boot sale, or I don't know what you guys call them, like lawn sale or whatever it is, like, when you have like getting rid of everything and getting a spring clean, it feels like an emotional doing of that. We need to, I always talk about the shedding, but I guess I find it hard to verbalize in words the different ways that we're shedding, because I think we're always shedding, whether that's like physically detoxing or emotionally detoxing or spiritually purging or whatever it is that you're going through. I feel like there's always some element of shedding and some element of releasing to create room for expansion, because again, expansion is always happening because we're an ever evolving being. So if we're always evolving, we're always expanding and releasing, no? So I guess it's finding ways to humanize it in a way that doesn't sound repetitive, because I get like sometimes that feeling that we're on a bit of a hamster wheel. And I think the more I interpret it and the more I understand the different layers, the different aspects, the different reasons as to why we're going through these things, the easier I find the process and the less like Groundhog Day it feels for me if I have more human understanding and interpretation on it. So yeah, I guess that's why I really like our videos, because we can sometimes talk about similar things, but it's different layers to it and it's different aspects to it and it's different perspectives. And, we go a lot deeper into it in some different ways and different angles. And so, yeah, I guess sometimes I feel like not much has changed, but then in the overall, everything's changing at the same time. It's like a weird, hard to put into words experience right now, but definitely feeling the urge to travel, to move, to shift, but also feeling the human restrictions of things and feeling a bit stuck in some ways and waiting for divine alignment to fall into place for everything to just feel more smooth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear that. We were talking
Mm.
the shed and I'm not exactly sure. I would say I don't have all the words for it either because this last weekend I went through a massive, I would call it end of cycle.
Yeah.
Was end of cycle, took it in really deep, had no clue I was going to go that deep. And
Mm.
you prior to this brought up darkness, so I want to put that on the table and just darkness, everybody.
I love the way you just go, well, I don't want to humanize anymore. Let's get to it. I actually love that. No, I agree. Yeah, just before we jumped on, I was like, I have this thought that came in earlier, because we've both worked in the worlds of demon clearing, entity removals, house clearing, past life clearing, soul retrievals, and all of the above. We've done a lot of the work with what I would call, in the most human, easily to translate word, will be like fighting the darkness. I would say I've used that word quite a lot. Whereas I'm not saying that's a wrong word to use, but I guess lately I've been sitting with the concept of yin and yang and of like the layers to what it means to be a being. And now I'm trying to pick my words wisely, because in no way would I ever suggest that like going to the level of darkness than what we've faced before would ever be like a vibration I would ever want to entertain in any way. But the concept that came up today was when we're integrating shadows, and my arm went up. When we're integrating shadows, like I made room, shadows, it feels like it's not always nice. So I remember I was in America for the first time, I think, last year in April for about 6 weeks. And for about a week straight, this spirit was like haunting me. And now I deal with pretty deep shit. So I'm like pretty adverse with getting rid, and it would not go away. And I was doing every trick I knew every day. And I was getting quite frightened because this energy felt so intimidating. And it was like really in my face. And it kind of made me feel a bit overpowered. And then I sat with it and sat with it and realized it was actually my own shadow. That's why it wasn't going away. So, it would make sense in that concept. But I had to really like look at why that made me feel that way, because I only work with energies if it's on my spirit team or like beings that come through that are of a higher love and light vibration. That's how I've always been taught. That's how I've always worked. And that just works for me because, again, I don't want to entertain or engage with anything that's lower than a higher heart frequency. For me, that's like my spiritual boundary. Like if you're not on this frequency of heart, then I don't want to connect with you in any way. So that's how I've always worked, and it's never done me wrong. But this shadow that I encountered that time she didn't feel very pleasant. She didn't feel like, hi, let's talk. Like, and obviously some spirits don't feel like that, but I still feel the love in the soul. Whereas this just felt way intimidating and way like overpowering. And obviously getting to the point, there was a lot of integrations of maybe like behaviors, activities, energies that I would never do in this lifetime, but did possess in other lifetimes. And that is still part of my soul. And my resistance and like repulsion almost to that energy was because I don't resonate with that behavior and that energy. And so obviously I don't choose to engage with that. And that frequency was coming through real strong. And so I had to like sit with, okay, so how do we work with this? What do we do with this? How do we neutralize this energy without integrating it into the human? And that's obviously when I did the higher self oversoul, and then whatever lessons, gifts, skills need to integrate into the human will. But it left me sat with this concept of darkness and yin and yang and shadows and all of that. And then again, it recently came to me like another shadow that was sat there, and at first glance it looked again intimidating or frightening or not nice and lovely and wonderful, of this love and light vibration. And that misleads me a little bit because I don't really know how to deal with that energy because I've not encountered it other than to get rid of it. And so when I'm like faced with it and I'm not there to get rid of it, and I'm not there to obviously work with it on like a communication level like I would a spirit or a session, I don't really know this space, and I don't really know how to navigate this unknown energy that could be perceived as darkness. And I guess it's interpreting what actually is darkness, what does that mean, and what does it look like in a human, and what does it mean for when we integrate shadows that maybe were of a lower frequency than we are now. Like, how does that actually look for our oversoul? And I guess like what does it mean to you? Because I'm questioning what the actual human translation is to me, and so it's nice to get reflections.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say with darkness is a really interesting one for me because I don't see any difference in it. For me, it's just still light. It's just a deeper aspect of light, and we're looking at, for me, like electrons and atoms. It's more dense and actually has more color to it when I dive into it.
Yeah.
But for my human body, especially when I've been for years going into this process and being taught that those darker vibrations are the ones that we don't want. I had to really take a look at that one and do a lot of work around it, because at the end of the day I'm like, that's actually, for me, it's not true in my own body.
Mm-hmm.
Perceive that as like something I don't want. It's just another level of a vibrational frequency. I do want to make sure that is emanating at something that I want to interact with. So I am always like, okay. And it's just a quick like, oh, yep, nope. It shifts around.
Yeah.
Or it's, for me, I'm going to alchemize this piece. Okay. So like there is obviously something right there. My body's perceiving it as like it's not feeling good, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, right? If it might just be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the like demon fighting, clearing, all that stuff. I don't do that anymore. It's a lot of energy I don't want to work with.
Oh, a lot of energy.
I'm like, oh, time for that, or energy. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to like bring that to the surface with what happened to me this weekend, which was a dark aspect, a feeling aspect. A lot of times that can come to me as my feminine. My feminine can
Yeah.
dark kind of a shadow.
Right. And that's the thing that gets talked about a lot, the dark feminine. And again, I want to break this down. Like, this is obviously what you're talking about, this darker feminine aspect. Like, because she's not all love and light and all, like she's like ready for war, but in the most protective, divine way possible.
Totally. I mean, it's for me, that's total creation energy, like that
Mm.
deep. Mine was very, very feminine. My masculine doesn't come in like that, but
Yeah, right.
like
So, what's the difference you think between the masculine and that?
um, I would say when my masculine comes in, it's like I can see the matrix. It's very kind of it's I can see
Mm.
the numbers to it, the lines to it. He's very more in the light, I would say, more light. But if you look at the yin and the yang, that's actually the masculine and feminine. The masculine is more on the white side and the feminine is the dark side. If you kind
Yeah.
of the metrics
Yeah,
of
I see that interpretation.
it.
See, with me, it's like it feels like I have maybe both on both. So it feels like I have a higher vibrational, like sense of or light, airy, fairy, feminine, and then a lighter, airy, fairy. That's just the way I'm using. I don't know why that word's going through, but we'll go with it. Masculine. That's like the difference would be between one's very like nurturing and plant loving and like very like a literal fairy,
Yep.
and that other masculine is more like understanding and grounded and strong presence but in a gentle form. And then on like the darker aspect I have the really like wild divine feminine, and then quite a dominant protective masculine as well. And so it's like I feel like I have aspects on both, yin and yang in between two sides, like mixing it up a little bit, because I guess I always associate the divine feminine with just the light fairy feminine for a long time because of this like suppression and shame and disconnect that we've had on women and on the sacral chakra and on expression and on women's power, and like that fire of expression has been so shamed that I guess it just felt like you say the concept of that almost felt like I would be perceived as dark if I was to embody that without having the level of grounding and confidence that I now have in my own like articulation and expression of self. I feel like if I'd have been in that before, it would have been translated by people, which I'm not bothered about, but you can see where people's lack of education and interpretation comes in there because of the human words and the human interpretation. And there is a very kind of toxic positivity vibe in the spiritual agenda that it's like it all has to be love and light all the time, and any emotion that's not, oh, don't know why my light just went off. It's a bit annoying. All right then, friend, thanks for that. Anyways, so yeah, I think that was kind of the gist. It's like the wild dark feminine has been, I guess I don't even interpret it as the dark feminine. I don't even use them words because of my own attachment to the word dark. And that's again the concept I'm trying to kind of pick apart. Because like you said, really it's all just energy, it's all just light. It's not like one or the other. But then in the same respect, what I always get drawn back to is, well, there is a clear divide between like who I am and what I stand for. And obviously the people that commit the awful things that we all talk about and raise awareness on and are here to change. Like, I suppose that's what I perceive as truly dark and like truly, as you know, obviously, truly dark experiences. And that to me, I struggle to see that as a form of the light.
That's understandable. That makes sense.
You know?
That makes sense. I would say that dark of course for me in religious perspectives and things like that, it's been touted as like hell and like, oh, you're dark. I hear that a lot. Oh my gosh, this person's so dark. And I'm like, they're having an emotional expression.
Yeah.
I think they're human is really what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it's interesting concept. I would say for me, like with the feminine, the masculine, and in all aspects, it's like like doing cat's cradle with your hand with a string.
Mhm.
Like you tip it sideways and it kind of pulls up like that. I would say that's like the spectrum that I see that I have. Whereas like it goes from the dark to the light and it reversible. It's upside down. It goes everywhere. It's all a part of me. There's no like difference. I don't have a line between the two. They're all in a beautiful spiral together.
Yeah.
Together. But that dark comes in, and I think my body is what I had to work through this weekend on interpreting what that was.
Mhm.
It was really deep. I mean, this was a piece. It came up like maybe a few days before this weekend where my feminine was just having a cry, like I need some help. I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at it and let's dive in there. And realizing that what I needed to shift through to close the cycle was very deep, deep guilt. And
Mm.
she wanted to bring that to the table. I had worked through this process maybe two times in this particular experience in lifetime. One was with a masculine who is a shaman, did not work, made it worse. Not a good idea.
Oh, damn.
The second time, I ended up still getting very ill and had to work through that process really intensely, and I couldn't do it all at once.
Mhm.
It's like the closing of that piece. So this took it really deep because I ended up getting a lot of the womb stuff. I had UTI, like all of that, like hit
Oh,
with
really?
half an hour. And I
Oh.
ended up going in really deep. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be here and not judge this. And that's what my body was like. I don't know what this is. I feel like my mind need to go. And I'm like, maybe we just don't judge it for a second. And we settle in. And it allowed my body enough space to be like, this isn't dark. This is a piece of me that I really, really want back. And I also really, really want to work through this particular guilt aspect. And the reason why is because I want more space in my system to receive. And it took it a while though to just sit with it and be like, this isn't what it was before. I'm not gonna look at this as something that's gonna be like negative or bad. I know this is a part of me coming up. I think the main thing was for my body was that it needed to feel safe to be able to interpret it.
Yeah, truly. Safety is the key, I think, to anything when you're doing this energy work, is feeling safe enough to be able to sit with it, look at it, speak about it, integrate it, do the work with it. You have to be able to feel safe enough to do that. And I think that's where the inner child work comes in, the conscious work of reprogramming comes in, the nervous system work comes in. It's so multifaceted, but safety is just like the key of it. And I guess that helps you when we are looking at the concept of darkness in itself. Like, when you know how safe and protected you are as a being living this human experience, again, this is in no way, I would never invite or create or open portals or like do any work that would be to initiate connecting with any frequency that would not be of a higher heart frequency. Like, let me just clear that out real quick, just in case that wasn't clear. We're not in any way encouraging to work with any lower frequencies, especially not intentionally. I guess what we're peeling back is, what does it mean to feel a part of us that's not all airy fairy and lovely and light? And what do we do with that? Because we're so used to like getting rid of the dark spirits, or if you guys have ever felt anything weird juju, obviously the first response is to get rid of it and to shut it down and get it away, which obviously is too right. But I suppose when it's his own shit and it's his own self, you can't just do that, because that's like spiritually bypassing the emotional integration that needs to happen. So this is why we're questioning this concept of what does it actually mean, because we've had to sit with the concept of darkness and the concept of, why does this aspect that I'm looking at of me not feel comfortable and not feel lovely and kind and nice and loving? Like, it feels maybe like there was some pretty dark stuff done, or pretty aggression, or pretty led by ego, or led by nastiness and maliciousness sometimes. And sometimes it was out of a response to trauma. And, like, there's so many layers, but I can feel that. And obviously we can all feel that when we're channeling in. And so it's not being afraid of that as if that's something to be instantly repulsed by, like I was. Like, I was like, go away. And I tried for 5 days to get it to go away, and it didn't, because it couldn't. Because it couldn't go away until I actually looked at it.
It
And
did
so,
not go away.
and then it did go away.
You know, and I, in my experience within the spiritual community, or people doing a lot of energy work, is like a constant, like, I need to clear it, I need to clear it. Or I hear that so
Yeah.
much, and I'm always giving presence to, like, well, what is that? You know, what
Yeah.
is it coming up? You can't really just push it away. It'll come back, you know, 10 times harder,
Mhm.
depending on what it is. So
Yeah.
that's not my first reaction to any energies around me, actually. And that's coming from a loving space of, like, I'm present that this is an energy that is in the universe. It's present. It's here.
Hmm.
You know, if it wasn't meant to be here in the universe, it wouldn't be here. So
Right.
I'm going to treat that energy with love and respect. If I don't like it, okay, then I'll set a boundary, and then I'll be like, okay, look, you're not, nope, that's not where we're at here. And I don't
Yeah.
watch the space. But that doesn't mean that I'm pushing away. It means I have compassion for whatever is around me, and I'm making damn sure that whatever is mine, I take in my
Yeah.
field. And
Hmm.
I was coming up this last weekend where there was a lot of things flying out, like lots of universal energy, and this part of me that was just so sobbing, and did feel really dark. That was the shame piece that my human had to work through, was that it felt like she was dark and dirty,
Yeah.
like this beautiful piece. And I've had really severe trauma in this lifetime, and it's moved through all of them, but in this one in particular, I really came down to work through some pretty deep processes. And that's the part that felt really just dirty and guilty for
Yeah.
stepping into my alignment phase and having to do what I needed to do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It
I
did
get
feel
that.
dark, and it did, and it was the whole womb stuff, and I just sat with it, and I'm like, it's I'm gonna be present with you in this, in that.
Mm.
And it took a couple days, and it's still working its way through, where I'm like, no, I'm going to be present with that feeling of, like, this feels dark and dirty, until my body was like, but it's not, this is a part of me, I'm going to own it, and also this is my power here. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to take the time I'm going to take to do it. But it did take it that minute. That's why the darkness thing, I'm glad that that was brought up, because
Mm.
out of perceiving all the things that I've worked with in this lifetime and many other lifetimes, that darkness is not a push away. And sometimes for my body, it's been like guilt and shame that has felt like,
Hmm.
right? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't be in this space. I'm going to put that on myself because I should be resonating something higher, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
love and light frequency.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there has been many lifetimes where I've been like, wow, the shame piece of the way I've behaved or what I've done, or like you say, how I've had to alchemize. And even in this lifetime, there's still a lot of that. And I think we do get convinced that we have to be this pure angelic vessel, but we're not here to be angelic. And being human is pretty down and dirty in earth. You know, you are in the thick of it if you choose to fully live. And it's not always nice and pretty, and it's not always an Instagram perfect reel. You know, it's the process of actually making the fucking reel, which is it's not easy, you know, and that's the point. It's the reality of the life that we choose to come here and live. And I guess working with the darkness over the years, lack of better words, I learned to understand that it's not actually what we perceived it to be. We were actually giving it way too much power, like way too much power, because of this fear of the unknown, obviously, and there's lack of education of all things other earthly in the realms. And we were actually giving away our power as a sovereign being to this unknown, fearful, dark entity, you know. And once you actually break it down and look at what it is, a lot of the time, it's got about as much power as it is in this finger, as long as you're stood in your true embodiment and you're knowing. And the techniques and tactics to clear it or to ask it to leave this dimensional space that you're in is so easy and so easy to do. You know, it's not an overly hard thing to do, but yet we've been the great forgetting, I call it, you know, like literally we've been memory wiped, obviously the great reset. And now we are starting to remember these things and how easy they should have been, but it was simply that unknown period that created the fear that gave it so much power. And when you actually look that they was also on their own mission to do their own job, to create enlightenment in their own way, from their own perspective, it does break down the concept of like looking at what is good and what is evil, good versus evil. And again, like for me, I don't know how to explain away the level of darkness that these things and beings have gone to on this earth with the children and stuff like that. Like for me, my brain can't quite comprehend what would be a universal purpose for that, because I think that is otherworldly. I think that was for other purposes, to keep us in a lower realm. And so I don't think that was meant to be on Earth. I think that was forced upon it, you know, and I don't think Earth liked holding that vibration in any way. And so I think the point is that that can no longer exist on this Earth frequency. So we're no longer faced with that level of darkness. So what we're around now is more a mirror reflection of what's within us, if that makes sense, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's again, it's an interesting concept, and I ask you guys all to really kind of sit with that and see how you feel about darkness. I know I have a lot of clients that come in and I use the word dark and see how people feel about it, because generally it's like, ah, I'm like,
To be honest, it does trigger me a little bit. Like I do get a bit triggered. I'm like, like not when you say it, but like I wouldn't use, like I said, the word dark feminine, because it instantly takes me to like a place of lower vibration. And I don't want to be associated with that in my own mind. But it's like that's still a program that's been created from this human consciousness. And I have that fully aware of that. And I can feel the resistance in my own body when I say it.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that repatterned itself for me this last weekend.
Yeah.
I was
Good,
like,
man.
I was sitting here with my body because I give my body all the permission to interpret the energy how it feels like is going to be the best and empowered for itself, right? Whether that is through
Mm-hmm.
art or, it's looking at understanding the things. I give it all the permission to interpret it how it wants. And what's funny about this human body and consciousness, it was like, I'm pretty sure that, we chose to forget as a distraction
Literally.
really, stop us from actually feeling all this stuff that this is a lot. So that's how my
Mm-hmm.
body interpreted that. I was like, wow, we just kind of use that as a little bit of a bypasser right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that happens. Sometimes I think it's necessary to survive. I think like we wouldn't have got through certain people. Like I have memories of things that come like 10 years later and I'm like, wow, I could not have dealt with the real situation that was going on at that time. I needed to be in delusional alley to be able to actually get through it and then process it after the fact. Because I think there's been times where if I had to sit with that in that moment, maybe it would have been too much for my nervous system and too much for my physical body to actually sit with it whilst experiencing it and whilst going through it. It took maybe sometimes a year or two later to actually have realization of the truth and the real truth of the situation. And I was okay with that because I knew it was necessary for my most evolved evolutional process in the most highest way possible. And sometimes I knew that we need to take that time to actually get through it, like just survive through it and then process it. And I think a lot of people put so much pressure on themselves to be constantly healing and constantly doing the inner work while still being in survival mode. And it's that you're naturally not programmed to do that. If you're running in survival mode and if you're running and still healing like from the current survival situation you're in, it's probably not the best idea to dive deep into past wounds and past traumas, because again, back to that safety piece, it's all about anchoring in safety in the emotional, physical and spiritual self. If we're not anchoring in safety, we're not allowing the space in the self to actually give it the honor and time and feeling the emotions that we need to feel to let it through.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that and appreciate what you said about that. And I wanted to kind of just move into that in this expansion phase where we're heading into, which is where the nervous system is going to be feeling more safe, uh, uh, more all the time. This is where it's heading into. Like I can feel it heading into that. It might take us a long time to get this, and we're gonna be doing it for a while. But knowing that and the memory that is coming back and the way that we're processing now, how do you feel like those memories are going to be coming like in through with the soul, with the body feeling safer? How do you feel about that topic?
I think the way I interpret it is like, so TikTok seems to be a big trigger for me lately. Like I keep seeing stuff And I start fucking crying all the time. And I'm like, oh, okay, then like, this is coming through, you know? And I guess part of me is allowing myself to actually feel it real time, which is a little bit new for me. And I think this is connected to the safety thing. Again, like usually, maybe what would have happened before is I'd have heard someone talking about it, seen the video, not had any emotional response whatsoever at the time, processed it, then thought about it, then sat on it, then come to a realization, then release something, then acknowledge, then expanded. Whereas now it's like, damn, I've just seen that activated something. I'm releasing it right now. I've integrated it. It's done. You know, it's like boom, 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 boom. And it's like that seems to be obviously a lot faster, but a lot more intense for a shorter period of time. So it's like a quick little burst of overwhelming emotion until then my nervous system regulating into it's now safe. It's not experiencing that anymore. That's an old pattern and program. We all right to feel it and sit with it and release it. And then it goes. And then I seem to just like soften again. And I feel like that safety piece is such a huge contributor to that, to being able to actually process it real time.
Yeah, no, I really get that. Yeah, I agree with that too. That's been an experience with me too, where it's kind of an all-encompassing. The bodies are like, okay, I feel safe to make that happen. You know, the process that I went through would have taken probably months.
Yeah, yeah, literally.
Would have taken months to
Literally.
work with. So I'm looking at it now and I'm like, it was a really, I don't even have the words for that whole process because it is an all at once alignment phase.
Mm.
And it's not all over the place and it doesn't take as long. And then when you're done with it, you're like, oh, I was safe enough to do that. And my body, what am I safe enough to do now?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think that that's making room for the feelings of like more and growth and expansion and like new plans and new ideas and new concepts and new, you know, plans and timelines. But it's still just at the back end of getting rid of the old limiting ones too. Like I still feel like I'm kind of half in and half out, maybe three quarters in the new, a quarter in the old. And I'm just still like navigating that little dance right now of being mainly in this new timeline and thoughts and frequency, but then sometimes being caught up in the old feeling of restriction and limitation and having to like recheck that and recheck that. I'm still reprogramming that one it's quite a big one for me is the limitation and the thing is the fear of being seen. I would probably put it under and working through that. And so it's like that's big on the safety piece, like huge. If you have a fear of being seen, it's all to do with the safety because being seen is to be seen in true self. And that's not always the most like emotionally and physically safest thing to do if you're looking to protect yourself in all ways. Like it's better to just stay guarded, you know? And so obviously I'm working with not doing that, but it's a real big one on my nervous system, that one. So I'm still being really tested with the safety piece massively. And it's like you say, I sit with it and I'm like, wow, if I can do that, what can I do next? But then I get hit and I'm like, not there yet. I'm like, not quite there yet, you know? And then I have to sit with like, okay, why am I not quite there yet? What's going on there? And why did this emotional reaction feel so strong? And da 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 da, you know?
Yeah, oh totally. Like it's definitely that step process with the protector aspect in the nervous system. Where like I'm like I work through this process and I'm feeling expansive right now, and then I go to like hit this next not the, I wouldn't say next level. It's just the softness that I didn't have before, and
Yeah.
like ah, there's
The
still
unfamiliarity. It's like, what is
yeah,
this? And I guess it's that shoe waiting for the shoe to drop. I have that a lot. I'm like, and it's not good because it's the living in a little bit of fear and anticipation, but I guess it has been like that sometimes. So it is reprogramming that old pattern of knowing that it is, you know, you are allowed to live in a higher timeline and not be afraid that it's going to be taken away from you. And that's something I'm still learning too, you know. And you also don't need to explain it to everybody. I was trying to explain how universal income is your birthright today. And I just realized like halfway through, I was like, yeah, can't be able to try to explain this anymore because it was like the energy is just not in the alignment. Like when you're there, you'll be there. Like, why am I trying to get you somewhere that you're clearly not there frequency wise right now? You know? And that was affecting my self worth because I'm like, I don't need to justify my self-worth and why I believe that we're entitled to that, because I've done my research onto why I believe on a human and spiritual level why we're entitled to that. And so if you don't believe that, then that's a reflection of your own inner beliefs and worth. And I'm not going to allow that to affect mine. And I really had to do this little conscious dance in my head and be like, okay, yeah, no, boundary, don't stop.
Circle that with the gold. Because, you know, especially energy wise and for my body, it's so aware of the things, like so aware. It's worked through the hypervigilance into like I'm gonna stay strong in my awareness and knowing without being like, oh my God, that's gonna like offset me into an unsafe place. But
Mm-hmm.
it's still like around other people, my body is really clear, like access denied. Just because you're experiencing it doesn't mean that's my experience. Okay. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna be diving into that. No, that's not my lack feeling. And I even though I appreciate you where you're at. Like
Mm-hmm.
no, but
Mm-hmm.
for a while there, it really was like, okay, that one belief system of like, of course, I'm attracting everything in my reality. And it really got confusing for my body when she was feeling very like safe in what she was building and her wealth and would be around others who weren't quite there. And then she'd be like, oh, well, you know, that was the lowering myself down to meet them at their level because I didn't want them to,
Yeah.
whatever the case is, that construct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now she's not doing that, but even still, like she has to watch it where she's like walking along and then she's like, no, that's not mine. It's not. That's not. I was born to be this worthy, and I was born to have what I have right now. And also, too, people don't get to take that off of me because they can get it themselves.
Right? Literally, they're entitled to it themselves. But that concept, it's funny because I'm working on that one in the worth piece and like the financial lack piece. But then when it came to being pregnant, and everyone feels like the second you get pregnant, apparently, like they have a right to tell you how to live your pregnancy, how to act as a wee being, how to breathe, how to birth, how to raise your child. Like everyone is entitled to their opinion now that you're pregnant. So that was a real wild ride for me because I'm very strong on my opinions and very vocal on them. And so when people was like physically projecting their own fear and birth trauma and traumatic experiences onto me to make themselves feel better continuously every day, I had to become so firm in my boundaries of the second they would start with that vibrational energy, I would shut it down. I would not even entertain the conversation and then wait to put the boundary in. It would be, I don't want to talk about that. Please don't bring that up because I am not allowing, my energy was so vulnerable at that time. Being a first time pregnant mum, knowing that I wanted to home birth in a unconventionally non-normal way, and knowing I had a vision on how I wanted to have birth and postpartum, and knowing that every single person around me was not fighting me, but they just didn't understand it, including like my own mum and loved ones. Like there was not specifically intentional shame or judgment, but because of the lack of understanding and education, there was a lot of fear. And I just felt completely alone in my ways of thinking other than my partner and my doula, obviously. And it was like we was in this little bubble. And I felt like I had to really do everything to stay in that bubble because everyone felt like they were trying to sabotage it, maybe not intentionally, but because their experience was different to mine, because I was the first person they knew that was choosing this experience and it was hugely unknown and unfamiliar, there was such a projection of fear completely. And it was so unneeded, unnecessary. It wasn't the way that you should respond to an unknown thing. And that's why it had to be such a firm boundary of this is me, this is my lane, stay in yours. And I was really strong about that and really fiery about that. And people got the message later on down the line. But it took so much of me when I was at such a vulnerable place. It took so much like strength to keep having to bring that level of protection of myself. And I feel like sometimes it's exhausting living in a world that's not quite where we would like it to be at, whether that's financially or like me with my experience in the medical system, or I was saying to Brad, like, wouldn't it be nice to just go to the shop in the supermarket and actually find like food that's good for you and like find beautiful fruit stalls and like fresh juice and meat and food that you don't have to spend like 2 hours checking the ingredients list of. And like, obviously, I know there is options there. I'm not saying they don't exist, but they're not necessarily conventional and accessible and financially accessible to the mainstream norm. And it just makes it even more of an inconvenience than it should just be a birthright. You know, all these things that are an issue in this world that should just be normal birthright things. It blows my mind that we have to fight for that accessibility to them things.
Yeah, that's a big process, and I also
Mm.
have had to really protect my own space like that before, and it's exhausting to be honest with you. You know, it had taken a lot of out of me to really shift that, hold that steady, and be like, no, I. Here's the thing, everybody. I appreciate your perspective, but please don't put yours on mine like that.
Mm.
The finite piece, because it's not. You know, that's another thing. Like we're in around all these people with constructs, and to come into a community space, which is what we're all wanting, is, you know, for me myself and my own personal work to be like, hey, this is your perspective, Anya. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
But it sure helps
Yeah.
like kind of put some parts and pieces together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity. And so like that's another piece where I'm working in with my community, the people that I want to be around, and having that openness there. So I'm not constantly like
Yes.
guard that. My nervous system is completely dysregulated.
Right. And it's finding the safe people to do that around. Like the second time I was pregnant, completely different because people had experienced it with me. They then got rid of a lot of the fear of the unknown. And so then it was like a whole different layer. Oh, okay, what do you need? How can we support you? How can we show up? There was this whole different layer of understanding and support. And like my best friend's going through it in a similar way now. And, you know, I see the difference of her having a me to understand what she's going through and being able to give her that support and communication. It's like, imagine how much different of a place the world would be the more of us are open in saying, this was my experience, but that also might not be yours. But I'm just giving you a reflection. And like, do you have anything you want to ask or like give me feedback on? Or like that space to, like I said to you earlier, like reflection and reverberation for me helps expand my mind, but not when it comes from a place of, oh no, you can't be doing that because this, and this, and oh my God, this happened, and oh, you were so lucky to get that experience. No, it's nothing to do with luck. You know, it's all these comments of judgment and shame and suppression and lack of understanding and lack of education that really come across in a really harmful way sometimes. And I think that's what needs to be reflected of because that's coming from a wounded place when you're acting and speaking from a wounded place of wounds you've never looked at, and then you're just projecting them onto this poor lady you've never met. Like that's repeating these cycles of trauma, and that's exactly what we're trying not to do. So this is not to shame anyone that also does that. It's just let's raise awareness on it because it was really annoying for me, and I felt like I was in a battle for myself to do what felt best for me. Never mind the battle against the system; that's a whole different ballgame in itself. But I feel like let's just not go there, you know. But I feel like it's a battle in itself just to walk down the street and like I'd get anxiety if people had asked me about my birth or like midwife appointments, and like I'd just get really bad anxiety because I didn't want to have to justify myself to people I didn't owe an explanation to, yet they felt indebted to it. And so it was like this whole navigational dance of boundaries, but it really taught me a lot to be firm in what feels right to my body. If you don't know in your mind, your body will tell you. If your hands start shaking, your breast starts going funny, all these anxiety things, that's a big sign that something's not quite right and that you're not where you should be, you're not with the right people, da, 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 da. You know, that's something I would look more into. Again, the mind might confuse you, but the body knows.
For sure. And I always say, everybody listen to your bodies first. You know, this of course has to come from, and I, you know, I've done this. I have been that like projective piece before.
Yeah, we've all done it, surely.
This is a human facet that we've had to work through.
Yeah.
And it definitely comes in from working with my own self-worth and not judging myself in a space, because, you know, I walk out in entirely myself, which is a very dynamic, colorful, kind of all over the place sometimes, canvas. And I get judgments all the time. It's just, how is my body going to react to those judgments?
Mm.
I be
Mm.
totally myself in them. And so I do it every single day, and I go to random places every single day. I get the judgments every day, and my body's like, ah, that's nice for
Yeah.
you know, but it didn't used to be that way. But it took lots of practice to get my nervous system safe enough in itself to be like, this is me. Like, you don't like it, who cares? Like, that's on you.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna love myself in the space with it. It doesn't mean that sometimes it doesn't get really annoying, especially if there's a lot of it, because then that's not
Yeah,
want to be in, you know?
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I felt like I'd really got there before getting pregnant, and pregnancy was a whole different layer because I'd created such a boundary that no one would ever question me pre-pregnancy. No, Anya does Anya. That was the thing. Just leave it to it, you know. But then as soon as I got pregnant, it was like everyone felt like they had a right to get involved, and that was way new for me. And so, even now, I feel like when I go to a mum group or like the park, just the way of anything in the human life, there is such a judgment on the nappies I use, the way that everything, you can tell, because I'm trying to be the least, what's the word, like problematic about my choices. Well, at the end of the day, if you're going to offer my child something that I don't want them eating, I'm going to have to say something in a way that's the most respectful way possible. But yet I still feel the judgment. And I'm like, why am I being shamed for your lack of education on why I'm doing this? Because I don't shame you for giving your child that. I still eat that stuff myself sometimes because I'm a fully grown adult and I have my own choice. But for a child, I just don't want to expose him to E numbers and excessive amounts of sweeteners that are literally proven toxins, that is completely unnecessary. And so I try to be as least toxic as possible. And I feel the looks of shame when I'm like, no, I don't want him to eat that. We don't eat that stuff at home. And it's like, what do you mean? There's such a shame and judgment. And the smallest little things create such an adverse reaction in people. And co-sleeping, that's a mad trigger for people, huge one. Such judgment on that and like literal fear. Oh no, so and so's kid died from doing that, and so and so, and it's like, wow, like we're really going there so soon. Okay. And I think that's the thing, fear is a big motivator of that. I did it myself in 2020 with the whole situations going on with this. I was massive on the you can't do that, the fear basic, because I was scared. I was really scared at what would happen to these people, what would happen to me and my life and my children and the whole world that was going to happen, my future children at that point. It was like I was scared. And so that was coming from a place of fear. So I understand why people do it, but I guess we're at a place now where we've got to be taking accountability for just not doing that stuff anymore and looking at where that fear charge is coming from within you.
Yeah. What would you say to the people watching when they're faced with all of that and they're trying to be seen as well and they're trying to have their authentic self and be at their highest point in frequency? What would you say to them?
I guess it's a beautiful question because I thought about this a lot now after the whole experiences I've been through, and working with my best friends really helped me reflect on like my journey that I went through pretty alone. And I guess in the moment that you're going through it, there is nothing really that will make it feel better other than I see now why I had to go through it. Because to create, I've always loved this analogy. If you're walking through the forest and you want to get to that place over there and there's no pathway, you have to make one sometimes. And that involves cutting down the branches with the machete and walking through it, really walking through it and creating that pathway, which you get quite cut up. It's exhausting, it's tiring, and if you're the first one doing it, you're going to get a lot of pushback from the forest. It's not going to be a toddle through the pathway that's already been walked through thousands of times. It's a completely new journey. And so when you're going on this journey, you are probably one of the first ones. That's why you feel so alone, like I did. And know that you are being a pioneer for change, for not just yourself, but for future generations to come. And now I have literally seen 3 women since I went through that be empowered by my choices and my capability to follow through on that, being able to actually go through it and show that it's not just luck, and it's about preparation and education and awareness of your own informed choices. And now they've gone through to have successful home births in their own way. And they all 3 of them have said they wouldn't have done that if they'd not watched me go through it. And that was really like kind of shocking because I just was there doing my thing, as I do. And it was shocking to see how much of an impact that had on other people's choices because they was led by fear of never seeing it before. And once they'd seen it, they felt strong enough to go through it. And that was so empowering for me to know that it had purpose And there was a reason for the suffering. There was a reason I was struggling to go through it, because I didn't know anyone that had done it the way I did. Not one person, not one mum, auntie, grandma, cousin, sister, friend. Not one person could I go to for advice about anything, because I was doing it completely different. And so I just felt completely alone. And now, then people that want to do it differently have people to ask. And that's the point. And so I would say, if you are struggling going through it, remember that you are going to be the people that people come to ask for why and how to navigate through it. So it's not without purpose. It's just getting the pathway built sometimes is a painful struggle.
Yeah, yeah, I have to say I've created a few of those pathways, and it was just keeping myself strong in that, and knowing that every time I took a step, and it was just a step, like I because that's really all I could take sometimes in those deep spaces. Just
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a step, I'm gonna take a breath, of me feeling by myself, to also know that I'm not alone in this, and I am creating my own path, and I'm going to take accountability for everything that I am and what I've created,
Mm-hmm.
and my belief systems, and my ancestry and all of that, and say, hey, look, at the end of the day, for myself, do I want to stay small, or do I want to create a path? And that's what really
Yeah.
helped me go, like, no, I don't want to stay that in that same type of a cycle. And in
Yeah.
doing so, I attracted the right people that helped me move through the process. And
Right.
I remember this story that I had, because there was a time when I was just coming out of really severe trauma, just hiding really, from a lot of abusers. And I was in it so deep that I was on the street for a while. I was blacked out, and I ended up having a Hopi chief uh, fall in my path and knew exactly what was happening to me.
Wow.
My processing, he took me in.
Wow.
And he helped support me while I was working through this really deep process. And he knew what was happening energetically to me too, spiritually. And because there were so many quantum perspectives that I was working on at one time, that he was one that fell in my path. And I'm very grateful for that, because that like rerouted my whole pathway, and I was able to have more come in, because
Yeah.
the person who understood me.
Mm. But how beautiful is that? Like, the alignment of knowing that the universe, we go through some things, and as higher self, sometimes we wonder, like, why on earth we're on this journey, what's the purpose, what's the lessons, and then all of a sudden there's divine alignment placed there. Like, sometimes I used to wonder, why do I have to choose what feels like the hardest route possible to do absolutely everything? Like, is this just my own fuckery or what? But then the thought of the alternative literally makes my body shudder. So I guess it's not a choice. It's just a knowing of
Sure.
what's right for me, and literally the thought of people were acting like it's so wild, the choices I was making. And I was like, for me, it's so normal. Like, this is the only thing that feels normal to me. So I can't explain to you why, because this is just my norm, And like you say, I was very fearful of what was that going to look like in the system? Like, how do you go about registering, and how is that a thing? And I found a lovely doula through like network, and she was so in alignment, and she's been there for both my births, and just wonderful alignment of like souls at the right time, the right place, the right energies, and just made it so much smoother, brought so much more knowledge, so much reassurance, and like light in times of doubt, and reassurance in when no one else could offer that, because no one else had that connection and that knowing and that experience. And so her presence was key for me to move through that.
Yeah, it's that's the incredible part about being able to trust that the universe is going to bring in at least the right phase once you start to create that pathway. Because like for me too, I was like, I am choosing that it feels like it's the harder pathway, but it's the right pathway. And also I'm going to keep doing it in every single route. Like, that was a big piece of me that I had to really sit with and accept that, like, I'm the one who breaks those boxes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stay in those. And it's I'm going to keep forging those for myself and others who feel like they want to come into that alignment phase, because that's actually who I am.
Right. Imagine how boring it would be to not be that. Like, I read something the other day. I actually think this was when I did my birth chart, which I'd never been interested in before. I was like, the other day, I thought, I wanna-" and it was all about breaking the mold, questioning the narrative. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like I just feel a little rebel from day. Like, just, does that really make sense though? And if it doesn't make sense, I just don't feel like it's true. If it doesn't click in my brain of, yeah, that vibes, I understand that, I get the frequency, I align with that, then I don't think it's true. Like when I get told to do something, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, but why? Like, surely that's for a bigger reach. Surely that's to conform. Surely that's like, why? You know, why is one of my favorite things to ask because it leads you open and open and open. And I think that's why I became such a good reader because all I do is ask them all, why? What's going on? What's this? Why is this? What's this? What's this? Why is that? Why is this? What's that? You know, the inquisitiveness is what gives me so much information is because I like to learn. I like to know what's going on. I think I'm very nosy in some ways. In the other realms, I'm like, don't care about Barbara down the street, but please tell me what's going on with the fifth dimension over here. Like, I'd like to have a lowdown, you know?
Yeah, I love to question because for me now it's the alignment phase is if it's confusing and my body's like what's happening, that is a no for me. That is not my alignment phase. It's got to be like a clear reaction with my body. And even if it's uncomfortable, there's a difference between this is an absolute no, it doesn't make sense, to that's new, that's curious, and I'm going to try that out because there's an open.
Yeah,
Right. So I watch those
totally agree.
body too, and I'm always learning
Yeah,
from everything. I find like the most, even if I'm looking at this lamp right now, I'm like, I'm really fascinated to how this was made right now and what like I'm always looking at these things that help me in my body, my neural network, work with the energy that I have or the energy that's coming in, any metaphor.
mhm.
Always it's constantly working at connecting those dots.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, just summarizing it back to what we were talking about earlier with the darkness piece, it's like if you're ever unsure about a frequency, just ask, show me your true vibrational frequency. And I think once you ask that question, energy can't lie. So you'll know like the true intention, the true frequency. And again, channel into that. If you feel a bit uncomfortable, that might not instantly mean it's this dark demonic thing. It might just mean it's a part of you you've been afraid to look at for the past 20 years. So it might be a bit uncomfortable, Get curious with being safe. Always have your protection and your guides and your grounding and your blue flame and all that shebang and get curious into, okay, why is that making me feel uncomfortable? What aspect is that? An aspect of self? Is that a shadow? Is that a different being? Like, get curious and know that you are very protected and you are very strong. But again, it's always about feeling that that sense of when you feel the unknown and the lack of education, that's where the fear is going to come from. And that's in anything, like I was talking about birth, talking about spirit world, talking about plant medicine, anything you want to talk about. If you don't have an education, and that don't mean you have to go to school to learn it, if you don't have what you feel is an informed decision and more of your own conscious choice of, yes, I am being drawn to this because of this, and I like this, and I've seen this, that's a sense of awareness and education and connection to it, then it removes the unknown and the fear of what if, and well, at least a lot of it. And so I think once you can sit with that, then it allows you to just surrender more to the experience, again, related to anything, birth, medicine, meditation, spirituality. Surrendering into the safety piece is the key to the expansion. And I think when we're looking at moving into this fifth dimensional being that's more evolved and more fluid, it's not about light or dark. It's about alchemizing what we usually perceived as shame and sadness and all these things into a bigger thing, into the bigger whole of energy. Like our oversoul is not inherently light or dark. Hopefully it's not one or the other. It shouldn't be anyways. The point is it should be just energy. And so it doesn't have human labels on it, and you could have done some pretty bad shit in other lifetimes, but this lifetime you're obviously not living that because your heart's recognizing it. And like I said, there's a line between what's light and dark within us and then what's like way lower frequencies of not earthly, not was never meant to be on this earth kind of frequencies, And I think that is a good question. Let me just finish on that, Z. The energy I'm talking about, obviously the children, the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, I don't know how to say it without trigger words, but you get my vibe. the whole thing of the other life. What if we believe that a lot of things that were on earth for a reason, with purpose, and higher self leads us into the right place, the right time. And a lot of these expansions I've faced with really lower frequencies, not that low, I've never dealt with that really, have brought me up into more enlightenment. So I do see the point of like when I face that, I've got to a higher level of consciousness in self, and I get that. But why would that frequency exist on Earth? Was that meant to be? Or was that like a violation of Earth and spiritual laws?
Oh, this is a really good question. It's also a real deep one.
I know. Bit of a deep one to end it on.
I think from my experience, it had to do with what we created that created and I'm not going to call it a violation, but I would say an imbalance.
Definitely an imbalance.
Yeah, I would call it that. And I would say that was something that we created. So to say like, yeah, everything happens, it happens for a reason. The earth already had it. In my experience, I'm looking through all the spaces right before earth was created, into formulation of the earth, into the humanity aspect, and into my role and how I wanted to work with humans and the earth. And from my perspective and what I've had to work through within the self, we created some stuff. We created it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to gain that perspective.
Yeah. It's just another facet of it. It's the way that I've decided to work with it, because there are so many things that we're not connecting the dots. I'm like, this is not making sense. This is not, I need to know more. I need to know more for myself. I want to go deeper. And that's why I asked the universe, just like you said, with intention, I want to know more about this. Well, then the universe is going to take you down that route.
Yeah.
I want to see it. I will say that you might.
I didn't mean that.
And I've done plenty of those where I'm like, oh, I had to go through that to take a look at that. That was rough. I appreciate it. Fuck. And also
Man, I don't want to do that again.
Right. But what it did teach me is what role I played in all of that, and
Right.
responsibility for like, oof, as a human, here is what I contributed to what creating an imbalance, and quite a power dynamic that shifted, and just really deep stuff.
Yeah. No, well, thank you for that reflection, because I think it's a weird topic to even talk about, because there has been such a, obviously, and again, rightfully so, we don't want to ever endorse lower frequencies to connect with. Like, that's never something I would do. It's never something I would do myself. So I would never encourage someone else to do that. But I guess it's important to look at these human concepts we've created when it comes to looking at darkness within self, because darkness within self is most likely guilt, shame, and fear. And so, yeah, it's important to look at that and deconstruct what you maybe believe that means on initial interaction.
And I would have to say that that's where I've hit the darkness phase of what it meant as a negative connotation, which would be the shame, the guilt, fear, all of those that would be considered a low frequency vibration, I needed to take a look at within myself to be like, oh, I'm shaming myself because I'm perceiving this as such.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like, why did humans do that? Why are the masculines doing this? Like, what was happening here? Like, geez, like, why are we doing this? And I was like, oh, right, because I need to take a look at it deeper. I need to go deeper with this. I need to take a more visceral look at like how I created a component into this that some of that off to.
Yeah, that goes back to his video last week. So if you guys missed it, we did a whole video on accountability and reflection of taking like accountable action on your own creations and on your own conscious creations of choice. So that was a really good video, and what Z just saying there really connected back into that. So if you have missed that, just check out the last video. But yeah, I think that was a really good way to kind of wrap it up, because as much as it's not always pleasant, especially when you've been through some fucked up shit, like most of us have, if you've been through this level of a dark night of the soul, let's just acknowledge you've probably been through the depths of the dark nights of the soul. So, we get it. And I think, we get it more than most. And it's not pleasant, and it's not joyful, and it's not love and light, and it's not airy fairy, let's walk into the rainbow magic. It is dark. Some shit is dark, and it's sitting in that darkness that has led to my brightest illuminations. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why we've brought this up today, because it's not being afraid to sit with that. And again, that's not saying, as we've cleared out many times, it's saying to not being afraid to look at what might feel dark within self, to alchemize it more instead of hiding it away.
Yeah, yeah. And what I love about the alchemization point that's coming through this is both of those can exist at one time. You can have the light, airy, fairy
Yes,
there. It's there for me. It's there consistently. And also I can hold this dark that I have coming through here.
exactly, exactly.
The, the whole
It's
process.
needed.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, it's needed. Like I feel like I said, I have four. I have the light feminine, the light masculine, the dark feminine, and the dark masculine. It's like I have a bit of a mixture of everything, and I feel like that's not including the inner teen, the inner child, the adult. There's, oh my god, we have so many layers. So
Yeah.
let's just like, try to accept and sit with more ones that might not just be predominantly, ooh, I'm a spiritual guru from this realm and realm, because they probably don't have the biggest expansions for you to bring, because these versions of you that are doing this shadow work in other realms mean that you don't have to do it in this lifetime. So we also have to have gratitude for that, because when they've gone through them big alchemizations of shame and done actions and behaviors that are of lower frequencies that they've learned such big things from, you're then gaining that knowledge and skills and learnings without having to go through that physical integration itself in this lifetime. So it's also a big gratitude piece.
For sure. Yep.
Mm.
For all those parts of me. So everybody, just to kind of wrap this up, dive into yourself, ask some questions. What does darkness mean to you? And knowing that you can have both light and dark, all of it is intermixed, it works together. And there's no right or wrong to this process. It's just kind of owning yourself and taking accountability, taking a step at a time, and being around people who help you feel safe in the process.
Right. So important.
Well, thank you very much. That was beautiful.
It was indeed.
Love you guys so
Goodbye,
much.
everybody.